Every year, thousands of gemstones pass through the world's major auction houses. Most sell exactly where experts expect, but every so often, a stone appears that changes the entire room. Bidders hesitate. Estimates suddenly look far too low. And within minutes, the value of a single gemstone can surge far beyond anything the market predicted. These moments don't happen often, but when they do, they reshape how collectors think about rarity, beauty, and value. In this video, we're exploring 10 gemstones that didn't just sell at auction. They shocked the entire market, from discoveries that rewrote the hierarchy of gemstones to stones so rare that collectors compete fiercely the moment they appear. And the final gemstone on this list was once considered the rarest mineral on Earth. Let's begin with a stone that changed how the auction world sees tourmaline forever. Ranked 10th, Paraiba tourmaline, the color that changed tourmaline forever. For most of modern gemstone history, tourmaline was never considered the kind of stone that could dominate an auction room. Collectors appreciated it for its wide range of colors. Gem dealers admired its geological complexity. But in the hierarchy of valuable gemstones, tourmaline usually stood far behind rubies, sapphires, and emeralds. That perception began to shift in the late 20th century. Deep in the Brazilian state of Paraiba, miners uncovered a variety of tourmaline unlike anything the gemstone world had ever seen before. The stones were not simply blue, they were not simply green. Instead, they displayed an intense neon glow, a color so vivid that many collectors initially believed the stones had been artificially enhanced. But the explanation was far more fascinating. Inside the crystal lattice of these tourmalines were trace amounts of copper, an element rarely present in gemstones in concentrations strong enough to influence color. When light interacted with the structure of the stone, that copper produced a color saturation that seemed almost electric. The effect was immediate. When Paraiba tourmalines began appearing on the international market, collectors noticed something unusual happening in auction rooms. Bidders who normally focused on the traditional Big Three gemstones were suddenly competing for a stone from a category they had previously overlooked. Prices began to climb rapidly. Within a surprisingly short period of time, exceptional Paraiba tourmalines were achieving prices per carat that rivaled and sometimes exceeded gemstones that had dominated the luxury market for centuries. Auction houses quickly realized they were witnessing something rare, not just a beautiful gemstone, but a discovery capable of reshaping how the market valued an entire category of stones. Paraiba tourmaline proved something the auction world had long understood, but rarely saw so clearly. Value in gemstones is not always determined by tradition. Sometimes it only takes one discovery, one color the market has never seen before, to completely change the hierarchy of value. But as dramatic as Paraiba's rise was, the next gemstone on this list shocked the auction world for an entirely different reason. Because for centuries, collectors believed they were looking at one gemstone, when in reality it was something else entirely. Ranked 9th, Mahenge spinel, the gemstone the market ignored for centuries. The gemstone that shocked the auction world next was never supposed to compete with ruby. For centuries, collectors believed they were looking at one of the most famous gemstones on Earth. In reality, they weren't. Many of the stones admired in royal collections across Europe, stones believed to be rubies, were something entirely different. Spinel, one of the most famous examples, sits in the British Imperial state crown. For hundreds of years, it was called the Black Prince's ruby, but it isn't a ruby at all. It's a massive red spinel. Before modern gemology, distinguishing between ruby and spinel was extremely difficult. Both stones shared a similar color, a similar brilliance, and often appeared together in the same geological environments. For generations, spinel existed in the shadow of a gemstone it closely resembled. Even after scientists formally identified spinel as a separate mineral, the market never fully embraced it. Collectors still pursued ruby. Spinel remained an interesting curiosity, admired, but rarely the center of serious bidding. Then something changed. In the early 2000s, miners in the Mahenge region of Tanzania uncovered spinel crystals with a color that immediately captured the attention of the gemstone world. These were not ordinary red stones. The color was intensely saturated, glowing with a vivid neon intensity that seemed almost unreal. Under strong light, The crystals appeared almost alive. And unlike many rubies, these spinels often displayed remarkable clarity. When the finest stones began appearing in international markets, auction houses noticed something unusual happening. Collectors who normally competed for Burmese ruby were suddenly turning their attention towards spinel. Prices began rising faster than anyone expected. Within just a few years, the best Mahenge spinels were commanding extraordinary prices per carat, placing them among the most sought-after colored gemstones in elite auctions. What shocked the auction world was not simply the beauty of the stone. It was the realization that a gemstone overlooked for centuries had suddenly become one of the most competitive stones in the room. Spinel itself had not changed. Its chemistry had not changed. What changed was the market's understanding of it. And once collectors recognized the rarity and color of Mahenge spinel, demand surged almost overnight. Yet even this dramatic shift in perception would soon be overshadowed by a gemstone whose rarity is tied not just to its chemistry, but to a location so specific that, for most of history, the entire world had only one place to find it. Ranked 8th, Benitoite, the gemstone the world could only find in one place. The next gemstone that shocked the auction world is rare in a way that very few gemstones ever are. Not because of color, not because of clarity, but because of geography. For most gemstones, rarity comes from how difficult they are to form deep inside the earth. Benitoite is different. For most of its known history, the entire global supply of gem-quality benitoite came from a single location on the planet, one remote region in California. The story begins in the early 20th century in the rugged hills of San Benito County. Miners searching for mercury deposits stumbled across unusual blue crystals embedded in white rock. At first glance, the stones looked similar to sapphire, but when gemologists studied the crystals more closely, they discovered something remarkable. This was an entirely new mineral, benitoite. The stone possessed a vivid blue color that, under certain lighting conditions, displayed flashes of brilliant fire that rivaled diamond. Even more unusual was its optical behavior. Benitoite is strongly dispersive, meaning it can split light into spectral colors in a way that creates bright flashes when properly cut. Yet the stone almost never forms in large crystals. Gem-quality pieces are extremely small. Many weigh less than a single carat after cutting. As collectors began to understand how limited the supply truly was, the gemstones slowly gained attention in specialist circles. But the real shock came when fine specimens started appearing in high-profile auctions. Because once collectors realized that nearly every gem-quality benitoite on the market traced back to the same location, competition intensified. Supply wasn't simply limited, it was geographically locked. Unlike gemstones mined across multiple continents, benitoite had no global network of deposits replenishing the market. Every new stone was part of a finite geological moment. Auction houses soon noticed that the finest examples were drawing serious attention from collectors who specialized in rare mineral species. Prices began climbing, not explosively, but steadily, the type of steady increase that signals something far more powerful than speculation. Recognition. Benitoite had quietly entered the category of gemstones where rarity alone could command extraordinary attention in the auction world. And yet, even a gemstone tied to a single location on Earth would soon be overshadowed by something even more unusual. Because the next stone on this list doesn't just depend on where it was found. Its value is driven by something far stranger, a gemstone capable of appearing as two completely different colors, depending on how the light touches it. Ranked 7th. Alexandrite, the gemstone that changes color before your eyes. The gemstone that shocked the auction world next does something that almost no other gemstone on Earth can do. It changes color, not slightly, not subtly, but dramatically. Under daylight, it appears deep green. Under warm indoor light, the same stone suddenly shifts into shades of red or purplish crimson. To someone seeing it for the first time, the effect feels almost impossible, as if the gemstone itself is transforming. This unusual phenomenon is known as color change, and in the world of gemstones, Alexandrite is considered its most famous example. The story of Alexandrite begins in the Ural Mountains of Russia in the early 19th century. Miners exploring emerald deposits unexpectedly discovered crystals that behaved in a way gemologists had never seen before. During the day, the stones appeared emerald green, but under candlelight, they glowed red. The timing of the discovery added to the stone's mystique. The gem was named after the future Russian Emperor, Alexander II, and its green and red color combination happened to mirror the military colors of Imperial Russia. Almost immediately, Alexandrite became associated with prestige and rarity. Yet the phenomenon that made the gemstone famous also made it incredibly difficult to find. Strong color change Alexandrite is exceptionally rare. Many stones show only a weak shift in color. The finest examples display a complete transformation. Vivid green in daylight, deep red under incandescent light. When specimens of this quality appear in auctions, collectors pay very close attention. Because stones that demonstrate a dramatic color change are far rarer than most people realize. Auction houses have repeatedly seen intense bidding for Alexandrite gems that exhibit strong optical transformation. Collectors are not just buying a gemstone, they are buying a phenomenon, a crystal capable of showing two completely different personalities depending on the light surrounding it. Few gemstones can offer that kind of visual surprise, and in the world of auctions, rarity combined with a unique visual effect is often enough to trigger serious competition. Yet even Alexandrite's extraordinary optical behavior would soon be overshadowed by a gemstone whose value was shaped not by science or color, but by a legend born high in the mountains. Because the next stone on this list comes from a mine that existed for only a brief moment in history, but forever changed the way collectors judge sapphire. Ranked 6th, Kashmir sapphire, the mine that defines sapphire forever. The gemstone that shocked the auction world next owes its reputation to a mine that existed for only a brief moment in history. Yet that short moment changed the way collectors judge sapphires forever. High in the Himalayas, in the remote region of Kashmir, a landslide in the late 19th century revealed something extraordinary. Hidden within the mountains were sapphire crystals with a color unlike anything the gemstone market had seen before. These stones were not simply blue. They possessed a rich, velvety tone, a deep cornflower blue softened by microscopic inclusions that scattered light through the crystal. The result was a color collectors would later describe as almost glowing from within. The discovery triggered a rush of mining activity in one of the most difficult environments imaginable. At elevations exceeding 4,500 meters, miners worked in freezing conditions to extract the crystals from the mountain. But the deposit that produced these legendary sapphires was never large. Within only a few years, the richest pockets had been exhausted. The mine that created the most famous sapphires in history had effectively vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. What remained were the stones already circulating in the market, and over time, collectors began to recognize something remarkable. Kashmir sapphires possessed a color quality that was rarely matched by stones from other regions. Even sapphires from Burma or Sri Lanka, both respected sources, were often compared to the legendary Kashmir material. In auctions, this reputation carried enormous weight. When a confirmed Kashmir sapphire appears in a major sale, collectors pay attention immediately. Because stones from this origin are not simply rare, they belong to a deposit that can never produce new material again. The mine that created them disappeared more than a century ago, and every year the number of fine stones circulating in the market becomes smaller. Auction houses have repeatedly witnessed intense bidding for exceptional Kashmir sapphires, sometimes driving prices far beyond pre-sale estimates. Not because sapphire itself is rare, but because the origin behind these particular stones has become part of gemstone history. Yet even a legendary mine high in the Himalayas would soon be overshadowed by a gemstone whose value is defined not by geography, but by a single color. A color so precise that collectors have spent generations trying to define it. Because the next gemstone on this list represents the benchmark against which all rubies are measured. Ranked 5th, Burmese ruby. The color that defines ruby value. The gemstone that shocked the auction world next is not defined by rarity alone. It is defined by a color so precise that collectors have spent generations trying to describe it. In the world of rubies, that color is known as pigeon blood. The term does not refer to brightness or simple redness. Instead, it describes a very specific tone. a deep, vivid red with a slight fluorescence that allows the stone to glow even in low light. When a ruby displays this color with strong saturation and clarity, it becomes something far more than a gemstone. It becomes a benchmark. For centuries, the finest examples of this color have come from the Mogok region of Myanmar, an area that has produced some of the most legendary rubies in history. Unlike many gemstone deposits, Mogok rubies formed under geological conditions that created extremely pure crystals with intense color. This natural combination of chemistry and structure produced rubies that collectors often consider unmatched. Over time, stones from this region began to shape the global ruby market. Dealers compared every new ruby discovery to the material from Mogok. Collectors evaluated color quality by asking a simple question: does it approach the color of a Burmese ruby? In auctions, this reputation carries enormous influence. When a certified Burmese ruby displaying the coveted pigeon blood color appears in a major sale, bidding can escalate quickly, not simply because the stone is rare, but because it represents the highest standard by which rubies are judged. Auction houses have repeatedly witnessed collectors competing intensely for these stones, sometimes pushing prices far beyond their original estimates. In those moments, the gemstone is no longer just a ruby. It becomes the reference point for the entire category, a symbol of the color that defines ruby value. Yet even a gemstone that sets the benchmark for its entire species would soon be rivaled by something very different. Because the next stone on this list is not driven by color or legend alone. Its value is powered by culture. For centuries, entire dynasties have treated it not simply as a gemstone, but as a symbol of status, power, and prosperity. Ranked fourth, Imperial jadeite, the gemstone that empires fought to own. The gemstone that shocked the auction world next does not owe its value to rarity alone. It owes its value to centuries of cultural power. While many gemstones gain prestige through royal collections or famous discoveries, jadeite achieved something far more unusual. It became deeply embedded in the identity of an entire civilization. For thousands of years, jade in Chinese culture symbolized virtue, status, protection, and prosperity. Emperors, scholars, and aristocrats treated jade not merely as decoration, but as a material representing moral and spiritual ideals. But not all jade is the same. The variety that dominates high-end auctions today is known as jadeite, specifically the most coveted form called Imperial jade. Imperial jadeite displays a vibrant, translucent green color that appears almost luminous when light passes through the stone. Unlike many gemstones whose brilliance comes from internal reflections, jadeite's beauty often comes from its smooth, glassy glow and remarkable translucency. Yet finding jadeite of this quality is extremely rare. Most jade deposits produce material that is opaque or uneven in color. Imperial jadeite requires a nearly perfect combination of mineral purity, fine grain structure, and intense color saturation. These conditions occur only in limited deposits, most famously in northern Myanmar. As the global gemstone market expanded in the 20th century, collectors began recognizing just how limited the supply of top-quality jadeite truly was. And once that realization reached the auction world, the response was dramatic. Major auction houses began featuring jadeite pieces that attracted extraordinary attention from collectors across Asia and beyond. Necklaces, bangles, and carved jadeite objects started achieving prices that surprised even experienced dealers. Some pieces sold for millions of dollars, placing jadeite firmly among the most valuable gemstones ever offered at auction. What shocked the market was not simply the rarity of the material. It was the realization that cultural demand could drive gemstone value just as powerfully as geological scarcity. Because for many collectors, owning Imperial jadeite was not only about beauty, it was about heritage, prestige, and history. Yet even a gemstone backed by centuries of cultural reverence would soon be overshadowed by something far more disruptive to the modern auction market. Because the next stone on this list represents a color that almost never occurs in nature. A color so rare in diamonds that when it appears, it can redefine the value of an entire category overnight. Ranked third, Argyle pink diamond, the color that almost disappeared overnight. The gemstone that shocked the auction world next is defined by something far rarer than brilliance. Its value comes from a color that nature almost never produces: pink. Diamonds occur in many shades: yellow, brown, blue, even green. But pink diamonds are extraordinarily rare. Only a tiny fraction of all diamonds ever mined display this delicate color, and even fewer possess the intensity collectors demand. For decades, the global market for pink diamonds was shaped by a single source: the Argyle mine in Western Australia. Discovered in the late 20th century, Argyle quickly became one of the world's largest diamond mines. Yet among the millions of diamonds it produced, a minute percentage revealed something extraordinary: natural pink diamonds. These stones were unlike the traditional colorless diamonds dominating jewelry markets. Their subtle hues ranged from soft rose tones to deep, vivid magenta. Because of their rarity, the mine began releasing only a limited number of exceptional stones each year through highly exclusive sales known as the Argyle tender. Collectors quickly realized something important. Almost every major pink diamond entering the high-end market could be traced back to Argyle. For years, this single mine quietly controlled the majority of the world's supply. Then in 2020, everything changed. After decades of operation, the Argyle mine closed permanently. Overnight, the primary source of pink diamonds on Earth disappeared. The effect on the auction world was immediate. Collectors understood that no new stones of this kind would ever emerge from the deposit again. Every pink diamond already circulating in the market had instantly become part of a finite supply. Auction houses began seeing heightened demand for the finest examples, with collectors competing intensely whenever exceptional stones appeared for sale. Prices climbed as buyers recognized that the supply of Argyle pink diamonds had effectively been sealed in history. What shocked the market was not simply the rarity of the stones themselves. It was the realization that an entire category of diamonds had lost its primary source forever. In the world of gemstone auctions, few events create stronger demand than the sudden disappearance of supply. Yet even a diamond whose rarity was defined by a closed mine would soon be surpassed by something even more dramatic. Because the next gemstone on this list has repeatedly done something that few stones ever achieve. It has shattered auction records. Ranked second, blue diamond, the gemstone that keeps breaking auction records. The gemstone that shocked the auction world next has done something very few stones ever achieve. It has repeatedly broken records, not once, not occasionally, but again and again. Blue diamonds occupy one of the most extraordinary positions in the entire gemstone market. Their color is not simply a variation of the familiar diamond spectrum. It is the result of an extremely rare geological phenomenon. Deep within the earth, tiny traces of boron occasionally become trapped inside a diamond's crystal structure during formation. When light interacts with those boron atoms, the stone absorbs certain wavelengths and reflects a striking blue color. The effect is subtle in some diamonds, but in the rarest specimens, the color becomes deep, vivid, and unmistakable. These are the stones collectors pursue, because diamonds of this type are extraordinarily uncommon. Only a very small number of gem-quality blue diamonds large enough for high-profile auctions appear on the market in any given decade. And when they do, the results can be dramatic. Major auction houses have repeatedly witnessed intense competition when exceptional blue diamonds are offered for sale. Collectors, investors, and museums often enter the bidding simultaneously, driving prices far beyond expectations. Some of the most famous examples, such as the Oppenheimer Blue and the Blue Moon Diamond, achieved prices that stunned even experienced dealers. In these moments, the auction room becomes something more than a marketplace. It becomes a stage where rarity, prestige, and competition collide. What makes blue diamonds particularly powerful in auctions is their combination of familiarity and extreme rarity. Everyone understands diamonds, but almost no one ever encounters one of this color. That tension between recognition and rarity creates a level of demand that few gemstones can match. Again and again, when exceptional blue diamonds appear in auction catalogs, they become the centerpiece of the entire event. Yet even a gemstone capable of breaking world records would soon be overshadowed by something even more extraordinary. Because the final stone on this list is not famous for record prices alone. For many years, scientists believed it might be the rarest gemstone on Earth. In first place, Painite, the gemstone that was once the rarest on Earth. The final gemstone on this list shocked the auction world for a reason unlike any other. For decades, scientists believed it might be the rarest gemstone on Earth. Not rare in the way collectors usually describe rarity, but rare in a much more literal sense. For many years, only a handful of crystals were known to exist anywhere in the world. The story of this remarkable mineral began in the 1950s, when British mineralogist Arthur Charles Davy Payne first identified an unusual reddish crystal from Myanmar. At first, the specimen appeared similar to other brownish-red gemstones, but when scientists analyzed the crystal structure more closely, they discovered something extraordinary. The mineral contained a highly unusual combination of elements, including zirconium and boron, arranged in a structure rarely seen in nature. The gemstone was named Painite, and for decades after its discovery, it remained almost mythical in the mineral world. Throughout the latter half of the 20th century, only a few specimens had ever been confirmed. Many museums did not possess one. Most collectors had never even seen a crystal in person. For a long time, Painite existed less as a gemstone and more as a scientific curiosity, a mineral so rare that its existence felt almost theoretical. That perception began to change in the early 2000s. New deposits in Myanmar revealed additional crystals, allowing a small number of stones to finally be cut into gemstones. But even with these discoveries, gem-quality Painite remained extraordinarily scarce. Unlike many gemstones that become more common once mining expands, Painite continued to appear only in limited quantities. Collectors quickly realized that the opportunity to acquire a cut specimen was exceptionally rare. And when such stones appeared in specialized auctions or high-end mineral sales, interest was immediate. What fascinated collectors was not simply the beauty of the stone, it was the story behind it. Few gemstones carry the distinction of having once been considered the rarest mineral on Earth. Owning a Painite was not just owning a gemstone. It meant possessing a piece of geological history, a crystal that had spent decades existing almost entirely outside the reach of collectors. In the world of auctions, rarity can take many forms. Sometimes it comes from legendary mines, sometimes from cultural demand. But in the case of Painite, rarity came from something even more powerful. For many years, the gemstone was so scarce that the world barely knew it existed at all. Auction rooms are often seen as predictable places. Experts study the stones, estimates are carefully calculated, and most gemstones sell close to what the market expects. But every so often, a single stone appears that changes everything. A discovery that reshapes how collectors see rarity. A color the market didn't expect. Or a gemstone so scarce that the moment it enters the room, competition begins immediately. The stones in this video remind us that value in the gemstone world isn't always fixed. Sometimes it only takes one discovery, one color, or one extraordinary crystal to completely change the market. And if you could own just one gemstone from this list, which one would it be? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy exploring the hidden stories behind the world's rarest gemstones, there's another video you might find fascinating right here.